In this video, I'm going to give you the tools to make some absolutely incredible looking custom maps in Minecraft. If you find this useful and want to see more, please consider subscribing, it really helps. To start off, the best way to make realistic maps on a large scale is to use the program World Painter. The download link for it, as well as everything else that I talk about in the video, is in the description. When you first start up World Painter, you'll be greeted by this screen. This default map is really small and not exactly what we want to start with, so let's open up a new world. I'm just going to name this tutorial, and I'm going to set it to 1.14.4 or later because that's the only way that it will work with the current version. However, some of the tools won't work because of it. I'm going to turn the size of the world up a little bit, but I highly suggest starting smaller than you think because it seems small here, but once you get in-game, you realize how massive it actually is. Since I want to make this world from scratch, I'm going to set it to flat. You can play around with the other settings however you want, but for what I want, this is just fine. Now that we have our world here, the first thing to do is to flatten it completely down to bedrock. Let's take the most solid brush, turn its intensity all the way up, and select the Raise Lower option. Use the scroll wheel to make the brush as big as possible and hold right-click to start lowering the terrain. Sometimes it doesn't update properly, but you can fix this just by holding Control and scrolling to zoom in and out a couple times. At this point, as you move your mouse around, you should see in the bottom left that your whole terrain has a height of 0. Now we can start to make the terrain, but at this point you should really get some custom brushes since the default ones just don't get the job done. You can find the ones that I use in the description. Once you download them, go to Tools, open Custom Brushes folder and drag your new brushes in. If you have them in separate files, they will appear on the side in different tabs so you can organize them how you want. Once you found some brushes that you like, choose one that looks somewhat mountainous. Then, on the options menu in the bottom right, set it to only apply at or below your water level. By default, this is 62. This will make your land only 1 block high to give you a base to start with. You may not want to do it this way and instead just have your mountains grow out of the sea, but this creates strange sloped cliffs everywhere and are really hard to fix afterwards. But it's entirely up to you. If that's the look you want, then great, go for that. Anyway, as you start raising the terrain, choose a whole bunch of different brushes, play around with that for a while, and make sure you really get the shapes that you want. Once you get something that you like, turn the intensity all the way up and start building your land. Once you have the shape that you like, turn the size down and go over the edges to add some detail. Also, brush over the ocean floor lightly to add some texture to it. For the purposes of this tutorial, I'm doing a really basic island, but you can spend as much time as you want on this making it look exactly like you want it. You don't have to do this next step, but I'm going to use the Annotate tool to mark out all the different areas that I want to make on the island. I want a big mountain in the center of the island here, and a bit of forest along here in the south. Also, to demonstrate some different types of terrain, I'm going to put some swampland over here. I also want to make this plateau down here a little rocky outcrop. I'll have some normal plains up here. I want to make the very top of the world all snowy, and I want to have a pine forest that is half in the snowy area and half not. And there we go. Now that I have a good idea, I'm going to get started. Now that we're working in 3D space, a really useful tool is to open up the 3D view window. If you click the lock button in the top left, this will keep it above the other window, even if you click off. And I'm just going to put it over here in the corner so we can always see what it looks like in 3D. When it comes to making mountains, it might take you a couple tries to get something that you really like, but the key that I've found is to start with your brush small, and as you grow the mountain, grow your brush in size as well. Hopefully, you'll eventually get something that you're happy with. I'm also going to add some texturing to the rest of the land to make it not all look like a big super flat world. Once you're done with that, you want to use the Smooth tool on all of your terrain that isn't the mountain to make it look a bit nicer. Now, I'm going to try and make the terrain for the swamp. For this, I'm going to want a very noisy brush like this one. Playing around with this brush along with the Smooth tool for a little while will eventually start to make some lake-like formations that we want for the swampland. I also want a river to cut through the top part of the map, so I'm going to use the flatten tool to drag out the river. Then I'm going to go through with the smooth tool and clean up the riverbanks a bit. Now I can start laying out the different kinds of vegetation that I want around the world. If you go to the Layers tab on the left, you can see all the different types of things that you can paint onto your world. I'm going to select the deciduous trees and use the spray tool to paint them into the world. While it is generally pretty smart about this, I would avoid painting onto steep cliffs because sometimes it will look really unnatural. And then we're going to paint the swamp in, as well as the pine forest. Now, using the Terrain tab on the left, we're going to start painting in the beaches. To do this, you need to select at or below your water level, like we did at the beginning, which should be, again, by default, 62. Select the bare sand texture, then the hardest brush, and turn the intensity all the way up. Now, just start painting, and your beaches should start to form. Also, do this over the ocean floor if you want your oceans to be covered in sand. If you go to the Layers tab, you can stop showing water and lava to make sure that you've covered the entire ocean floor. I don't actually want there to be sandy beaches in the swamp, so I'm going to take the grass and replace it. Then, painting only on water and using a very light brush at low intensity, I'm going to draw some of the sand back in to make a sort of gritty texture. Now, for the rocky peninsula, I want to use the rock texture, which is a combination of stone and cobblestone. And then we can just paint this into the area that we want it. At this point, I also want there to be some rocks on the cliff face of the mountain. To do this, I need to select above 45 degrees so it will only paint on the slopes. Exactly like this. Next, in the Layers tab, I can start to use this frost layer to paint in the snow. Now, we're ready to export the world. You can either go to File, Export, or just press Ctrl-E. As always, you can play around with these settings however much you want, but this is exactly what I need for now, so we're just going to go ahead and export. This may take a minute, but once it's done, you just need to open up Minecraft and your world should be there. And now, here's our world. It will complain when you first try to launch it, since it's technically not in the same version, but just launch it anyway and it should be just fine. Finally, all you have to do is enjoy the world that you made. Let's have a look.